For more than 50 years, Cotner Farms has been highly invested in no-till management and soil conservation strategies. Dean James manages Cotner Farms in Northumberland County, Pennsylvania, with 2 other farm managers. Cotner Farms is a 1,500-acre, fifth-generation century farm. The farm has a large operation of layer hens and produces its own grain for chicken feed.
We raise 3 principal crops: corn, soybeans, and hulless barley. And we market those. We feed our own corn because with the layers we have, we've got 460,000 layers here, and we make our own feed and market our own eggs, so we've got a readily available market for the corn. The soybeans go to Boyd Station to be processed to come back to the farm. And we got onto this hulless barley was kind of something that we could have a rotation with, and also to feed to the chickens. We did the homework there, and everybody said it was good to go without too many issues, so that's kind of where we've been going.
The Cotner family also owns and operates nearby Boyd Station, a grain merchandiser and organic soybean processing facility. Boyd Station gave them an immediate market and incentivized them to produce their own organic soybeans. Dean is currently transitioning about 60 acres to organic production, which will be fully certified in 2022. They also plan to transition nearly 200 more acres to organic production over the next several years. Starting small has helped them get over the learning curve.
One of the easier things for us has been is we started with 60 acres, and half of that we put into hay, so we wouldn't have to worry about and manage that. That's pretty much a given. And we've concentrated on the oats and the soybeans and the corn to learn as much as we can on that.
The main difference between organic and non-organic production is Dean's reliance on the crop rotation to supply nitrogen and control weeds. A standard organic rotation on his farm is soybean and oats. So
for right now, it's pretty much soybean and oats. That's been kind of our rotation. Grow the soybeans, supply nitrogen for the oats, and then we take the oats off early to grow rye to roll down for our soybeans to no-till soybeans into.
Dean plans for a full organic crop rotation to be 6 years, which will include 3 years of an alfalfa orchard grass hay mix. The perennial hay crop also provides weed control and builds a nitrogen bank for the following cash crop.
Well, we've had to change crop rotation to be able to grow our own nitrogen. That was the big concern, and also to try to get ahead of the weed competition. So that's pretty much because we had not grown any hay prior to, well, this is the 2nd year now for years. And but I think that's pretty critical in defeating the weed cycle as much as the tillage would be, because we can see a big difference in the weed pressure in those fields this year. And the more reading you do, they talk about that being kind of a thing that's important to be able to break the cycle.
The decision to produce organic crops was difficult because it required tillage on the long-term no-till farmland. Tillage was necessary to prepare crop seed beds and control weeds, but it challenged Dean and the Cotners' commitment to soil health.
So, and it wasn't an easy thing for us, because it was always, organic fields are always weedy and they use a lot of tillage. And so we had to get around that lump in the road. And so I think we've got that, hopefully, to where we're agreeable with reduced tillage and the cover crops being in there, that we can hopefully go and be okay at it.
Dean approaches organic farmland management by leading with his no-till philosophy. He uses as many strategies as possible to build organic matter in the soil and to reduce soil disturbance.
We're going to try to start out at that point rather than go back to the moldboard plow for everything and the cultivation and the bare ground. I think the one thing that I've learned is that the folks with no-till, or not no-till, but organic with the rotations and using the covers can actually build the soil health. And I've always questioned that, because it's always been, the first thing was no-till, because you don't disturb anything, and then add the covers in. But you know, you leave all that on the surface, and now maybe with some reduced tillage of some sort, like a high-speed disc where you're only tilling up, because there's all that soil structure underneath from the no-till that we want to try to maintain. And so we're thinking that a high-speed disc is going to be more of the tillage tool of choice once we get enough acres around to do that.
Dean has also found that incorporating a small grain, usually as oats, is incredibly helpful in breaking the weed cycle and reducing the need for deep tillage. Eventually, he would like to try using barley in his organic systems for the same purpose.
The weed control issue is something that's forefront in my mind. And so the weeds that grow out there, typically the weeds that give you trouble in corn and soybeans. So if we can throw that off with a small grain rotation, we can get in and control those weeds then in a different realm so they don't go to seed. So that's been a big thing too.
And that's where the oats help?
Yeah, because then as the oats come out, as the oats are growing now, I mean, we can get the crop without the weeds interfering too much. We run a tine weeder in after we plant oats, so that'll take out the small ones. And then as the other ones come up in the oats, we can harvest the oats, and then the weeds will be there, and then we can destroy those with tillage and not have to worry about them going to seed.
In addition to using some existing farm equipment, Dean has since invested in some minimal tillage equipment and hopes to get more as they transition more ground. In particular, he is hoping to get a high-speed disc. Currently, he uses the tine weeder to control emerging weeds and a roller crimper to kill a cover crop.
The tine weeder, we start using that as soon as the oats come up. And we've also used it before they've germinated. If we see weeds coming up, white-rooted weeds, we'll run the tine weeder and then continue it right on through until the crop gets big enough, or as Dave Johnson would say, until you figure you're doing more damage to the crop than the weeds would do. And so that's with the tine weeder. The cover crop roller, with us trying to do no-till soybeans and no-till corn, that's come in handy to roll things down. And the one thing we've discovered with our cover crop mix, we've put clover in it, along with the rye in winter peas and balança clover. There was crimson and balança is what we grew where we're going to do corn. And we discovered that rolling the rye at antithesis doesn't necessarily take the clover out. So we rolled clover, the rye to begin with, both directions. And then the clover picked its head back up. So we had to go back through a couple weeks later and roll the clover again. And so time will tell whether we have a permanent cover crop of clover out there yet or not. But that's what we deem part of this is a learning curve. So we're learning. We learned last year not to use vetch.
For farmers who want to manage organic cropland, Dean recommends learning as much as you can and not being afraid to challenge yourself or the status quo.
Don't do it just because that's the way the neighbor does it. Push yourself a little bit and try to work toward the no-till aspect and use cover crops. But here I am, we've been at it 2 years, and so what do we really know about it? That's the question. But I think that's part of it, to work toward the soil health aspect. Don't abuse the soil. It's there, and the more we learn about the soil, the more we realize that we don't know a whole lot, but what we do know, we can apply. Go visit somebody that's doing something different. See how it's working. See if you can improve yourself.